Israel has hit multiple targets across Lebanon, including the capital Beirut, for the first time in weeks. Southern Lebanon was hardest hit. Strikes there left at least 14 people dead. Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah militants. Now, officially, there's a fragile ceasefire in place, and the two sides are due to hold peace talks in Washington on Friday. Here's more.
The Israel Defense Forces carry out a strike in the town of Tyre in southern Lebanon. The IDF has targeted the coastal town many times before, saying that it's striking locations in the city linked to Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militant group. Residents salvage what they can from the rubble, again, with resignation and defiance.
What can I say? Look at this. It's the second or third time we've had to repair everything.
We're staying here. We won't leave. This is our country, our land, our lives and our livelihoods. They can only send out hatred and poison because they are suffering big losses there. They're taking it all out on this city.
Israel has expanded what it calls an evacuation area or combat zone in southern Lebanon. As it increased its bombing campaign, Israel is telling more and more Lebanese residents to leave their homes. The new zone extends 40 kilometres beyond the Israeli border. Israel says it's aiming to establish what it calls buffer zones in Lebanon so that it can combat Hezbollah militants. It accuses the group of hiding its fighters amongst civilians. In Sidon, which lies outside Israel's evacuation area, rescue teams worked to pull people from a building damaged in an Israeli strike overnight. It housed people who fled the fighting in southern Lebanon. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced since Hezbollah and Israel went to war after Israel and the US attacked Iran. A ceasefire has been officially in place since mid-April, but attacks continue almost daily, with each side blaming the other for truce violations. Israeli and Lebanese officials are due to meet in Washington for talks on Friday, aimed at ending the conflict in Lebanon. But Hezbollah says any peace deal has to be part of a broader agreement between Iran and the US.
And we are joined now by Makram, Rabah, an assistant professor at the American University in Beirut. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your time. Israel has struck near Beirut. Of course. We are hearing that Israel has struck now near Beirut for the first time in weeks, while fighting between Israeli troops and Hezbollah continues in the south of the country, despite a ceasefire on paper. How do you see this conflict now developing going forward?
Well, I think that what's happening right now is a normal, quote unquote, because the Israelis have been clear that whatever happens on the peace table, this will not change their initial goal, which is basically implementing 1701, even if this means destroying the entirety of Lebanon. As we see, this is not really only a military option. They have a military option, but also a political option. The problem here is that Hezbollah are still betting on what happens in Islamabad, meaning that they are not refusing to negotiate with the Israelis, but they want Iran to do this on behalf of the Lebanese, where in fact they continue to use the Lebanese civilian infrastructure as a kind of a human shield. And the problem is, be it from the Israeli side or from the Hezbollah side, there's no end in sight. And the real alarming part, Sarah, here is not the fact that these villages are being destroyed. Even if we do get to a ceasefire, none of the 1.5 million refugees will go back home, because as you see in front of you, these villages have been razed to the ground, and I don't think anyone would invest in rebuilding Lebanon if Hezbollah is not totally disarmed.
Against that backdrop, Israeli and Lebanese officials are due to meet in Washington for separate talks on Friday aimed at ending the conflict in Lebanon. Do you see a realistic path toward de-escalation?
Well, I don't think that this will translate directly in a kind of a de-escalation phase. However, what's happening in DC is very positive for the Lebanese government, because the Lebanese government is building credit vis-a-vis its engagement with the Trump administration or with the Israelis. The Israelis simply will withdraw after the Lebanese government takes command of its own sovereignty and disarms Hezbollah for real. Theoretically, the Lebanese state have issued a kind of a clear policy statement that Hezbollah is a terrorist entity, at least its political wing, whatever this might mean. However, on the ground, I don't think that what happens on the peace table can change what's happening on the battlefield, because Hezbollah have entered a new phase by using the FPVs, which they believe can embarrass and hurt the Israelis, while the Israelis are coming closer and closer to parliamentary elections. And as you know, Sarah, every politician, including those who are against the war, will use Lebanon as a bargaining chip to get more and more votes.
Israel says that its goal is restoring security in the north. Do you see that as militarily achievable?
Well, I don't think it is achievable only through military. Ultimately, the Israelis were able to achieve this in 2006 when they were able to negotiate an indirect ceasefire with the Iranians. So certainly using the stick always works. However, in this case, we don't want them to use the carrot by empowering Iran to continue its occupation of Lebanon. As we speak, Iranian occupation has invited Israeli occupation, and this is the actual quagmire in this. And whatever happens, be it in Islamabad or in Washington, D.C., what is needed is for the Lebanese government and the Lebanese armed forces to take lead and to systematically disassemble what we call Hezbollah, which is basically a version of the IRGC in Lebanon.
As it stands right now, how weakened is Hezbollah compared to previous conflicts?
Well, certainly Hezbollah is at its weakest point, but this doesn't mean that it is totally destroyed. Hezbollah uses Lebanon's sectarian politics by claiming that it represents and protects the Shiites of Lebanon. However, if it is left with its arms, these arms are enough for it to continue controlling Lebanon. And whatever happens, as you see, Hezbollah has declared victory. So we are dealing with an entity that doesn't actually care about human life. For them, blood can be used politically to gain more and more political leverage. So in a way, betting on the military destruction of Hezbollah will not translate directly into a new Lebanon. What is needed is for the Lebanese state and the Lebanese system to find a way to clean house.
Is there the political will for that to happen? And do they have does the Lebanese state have the backing of the people? What is the state of sympathy right now toward Hezbollah and its cause?
Well, unfortunately, the Shiites have been isolated because of what Hezbollah has been doing. And the Lebanese sectarian system allows it to continue to speak on behalf of the Shiites, particularly also through its alliance with the Speaker of Parliament and the leader of the Amal movement. However, I think the majority of the Lebanese, according to recent polling, want peace with Israel, which will translate directly in a kind of a disarming of Hezbollah, which have used its arms internally. And at the end of the day, Sarah, it's not here a popularity contest. Even if the majority of the Lebanese don't want this, the Lebanese constitution clearly says that the monopoly of arms should be to the government. And because Hezbollah has been implicated in Yemen and in Syria and in the killing of our former prime minister, I don't think they should be given the luxury of being treated as a Lebanese entity. At the end of the day, whatever happens, the Lebanese Republic and the Lebanese president have a sacred duty to protect the constitution and to protect all the Lebanese, starting with the Shiites of the south.
You mentioned the huge number of people who have been displaced now by this conflict. How do you see the long-term consequences for civilians on both sides of the border?
Well, certainly in the case of Israel, the Israeli state is there. The Israeli state in the previous conflict moved these people to hotels. In Lebanon, these people are now camping out in tents in public squares. And Hezbollah are using this displacement as a kind of a tool against the government to potentially use it in any future confrontation. So in a way, if the state does not exist here and it doesn't really systematically show that it has a plan forward, I don't think that the 1.5 million refugees will ever see their villages and their homes. Not to mention that Hezbollah, by turning them into ammo dumps and ammo depots, they have allowed the Israelis to destroy the entire infrastructure, the civilian infrastructure of these villages, which will require billions of dollars and it will take time. And this is why the humanitarian consequences on these people will be very dire.
Makram Rabah, assistant professor at the American University in Beirut. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now is Bilal Saab, Senior Managing Director of Trends U.S. That's a company providing analysis on political, defense, and security issues related to the U.S. and its Middle East partners. Mr. Saab, it's good to have you with us. Let me just ask you, are we watching that fragile ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon collapse?
I don't know if collapse will be the right term to use, but I certainly sympathize with anybody who would say that this is a pretty fragile ceasefire. It's only, frankly, ceasefire in name. And the major reason why we're in this situation now is because the Israelis are quite nervous about what's being talked about between the Americans and the Iranians. So they're sort of trying to accelerate their military activities in southern Lebanon before any kind of agreement takes place between Washington and Tehran.
You have argued that Lebanon has a rare opening to reclaim decisions of war and peace from Hezbollah. But if you look at what's happening on the ground right now, I mean, is that option even realistic?
That's a good question. So listen, the opportunity doesn't mean that you seize it immediately. Obviously, it's there on the table and it's a process. And the process being you're going to see round 4 of negotiations between the Israelis and the Lebanese official sides to talk about A, extending the ceasefire, and then B, coming up with some kind of a security arrangement that satisfies Israeli security concerns, but also meets the demands of the Lebanese government, which would stop the fighting, which would ultimately lead to the Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon and various other, contentious issues between the two countries. But at least on paper, formally speaking, I am sticking to my argument that the Lebanese government has an opportunity to assert itself in foreign policy and in decisions of war and peace. It's just obviously a matter of implementing it and getting there through a gradual process. It's just not going to happen overnight, obviously.
Well, can it happen as long as there is Hezbollah? I mean, it is weaker today, that's true, but it certainly isn't gone, and it's not taking part in any talks. It is opposed to the negotiations in Washington. Without Hezbollah on board in some manner, can these talks produce anything that will make a lasting difference?
Well, obviously, the two concepts, my friend, are at loggerheads in the sense that the very activities of Hezbollah are in contradiction, obviously, with the Lebanese state's desire and ability to assert itself. And that's what we're trying to figure out here. I mean, that is the whole dilemma here. The two cannot coexist, is my point. Mm-hmm. But I still believe that there are certain steps that the Lebanese government has taken, and you got to give them credit, quite historic, frankly, both in speech, but also in practically speaking, that have made life for Hezbollah a little bit more difficult to operate, but financially, legally, to some extent, although it's not sufficient, I agree with you, militarily speaking. But it does require the cooperation of the Israelis. I mean, for me, it's simple physics, frankly. Mm-hmm. In order to bring down Hezbollah, you got to be able to prop up the Lebanese government. And so somehow that memo has been missed by the Israelis. You got to give the Lebanese government sufficient political ammunition in order to confront Hezbollah more effectively and more boldly than what they have done thus far. Further occupation of Lebanese land is certainly not going to cut it. It actually is in contradiction of the common mission here, which is to weaken and ultimately dismantle Hezbollah.
Let me ask you before we run out of time, there seems to be a paradox here. I mean, Israel says that it must keep striking because Hezbollah remains armed, but every Israeli strike can also help Hezbollah argue that Lebanon still needs armed resistance. Is Israel weakening Hezbollah, or is it helping preserve its justification for existing?
The point is very well made, and I certainly agree with you that there is a paradox there. But this is where you got to think a little bit more creatively beyond the narrow-minded, short-sighted security logic of the Israelis, right? There is obviously a security imperative there, which is urgent, right? Especially with the drone attacks by Hezbollah. But then you got to think a little bit more sustainably than that. You got to think of a much more long-term approach that has to incorporate diplomacy. It has to incorporate politics, except that the Israelis have never been good at that, right? So you can always adopt the approach of mowing the lawn, but you got to learn from history. I mean, it's not like the Israelis are doing this for the first time in southern Lebanon. I mean, they did it for 15 years from 85 to 2000, and then they had to withdraw in a very humiliating fashion. So you got to learn from history.
Mr. Saab, unfortunately, we're out of time, but good discussion with you. We appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.